Hello and welcome to the Story Engine podcast. My name is Kyle Gray, and today on the show we have Armando Leduc. Armando is a content creator and helps many different high profile lawyers share their stories online and on YouTube. Today we're going to be talking about how he discovered how to infuse the 5 love languages, something that is a framework primarily for relationships, into all of his emailing, marketing, and nurturing of both his clients and his prospects. So without any further ado, let's hand it over to Armando Leduc. Armando Leduc, welcome to the Story Engine podcast.
Thanks. Dude, I'm already excited. I'm already in, bought in. Let's.
I am so excited. You've got so many different things going on, and I would love to introduce you to the audience today. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you're showing up in the world today?
Who am I and how am I showing up in the world? I am an entrepreneur, producer, writer, actor, performer. Performing has just been in my blood since birth. And so I really do enjoy just creating things and just being creative. That's where I'm really just my head and just my body gravitate towards being just a creative person, solving problems and helping people. And how I show up in the world these days is just with heart first, connection, and just joy and gratefulness for being here. I'm just grateful to be living.
Amazing. Tell us a little bit. I've got a soft spot for performers and creatives. What does that look like? Do you play an instrument,
Uh,
singing,
I
dancing?
sing. I sing. I write.
Mm,
I started off in musical theater. My first play that I ever auditioned for was Danny Zuko in Greece, and I got it, and it just changed the trajectory of my life. Right, I
mm,
just didn't really fit in high school, and so when I auditioned for this play, which I was really scared to do, pushed myself out of my comfort zone and finally found something that I was just like, oh wow, I feel good here. I feel accepted here. And up to that point, I don't think I ever felt accepted. I was always the black sheep. I was always kind of, the weird person, and I never found my tribe. And so when I started doing theater, it just kind of worked for me, and started singing. Joined a boys quartet, and then joined the Society for the Preservation of Barbershop Singing across America. And I sang in a barbershop quartet for 4 years, and sang in a rock band, and went to school for opera, and did tons of musical theater, and moved to New Orleans to pursue my acting career, and sang on Bourbon Street for like 8 years, and had a wedding band for another 10. So, I think I've sang Don't Stop Believing about 1,000 times.
oh man, it's a wedding requirement.
It's a
Has
wedding
there ever
requirement.
been? Tell me how many weddings that you've been to that you didn't play that song.
Only if they requested not to hear it.
Yeah,
That was our closing song, right? I
yeah,
would say, ladies and gentlemen, there's only two kinds of people in this world: people that love Journey and liars.
nice.
Don't, and it happened. And then, so I would get everybody. I was like, everybody, come to the floor, right? And they'd come to the floor, and then I'd get in the middle, and we would do a sing along, and it was just, yeah, it just really was a nice bookend to these weddings, which I really enjoyed.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned feeling like a black sheep sometimes, and I have this certain theory that everyone who becomes an entrepreneur has to get their wires crossed in their mind in just such a certain way. And I think that's something that you're hinting at of not quite fitting in. And while it at the time probably felt like a challenge or a curse, probably revealed one of your greatest strengths, which again, this became a channel for you not only to find a way to be accepted in a community and accept and showcase yourself and get on stage and get in front of more people when at first you felt rejected. Tell me a bit about this evolution, if you've experienced this or reflected this at being a black sheep and now doing this work that you do where you are so visible, not just as a performer, but as an entrepreneur and a leader, and being visible among many other high profile leaders.
Yeah, it's so funny when you talk about how do I reflect. I was doing a talk in at the beginning of the year at Eight Figure Firm on client journey and why you need to put a client journey together. And this was for attorneys. And I had read a book on public speaking, and the biggest it was a book on all of the TED Talks, right? And what made the most successful talk TED Talks successful. And one of the big things was, why are you delivering this speech anyway? And I was like, all right, let me kind of back up. And I pinpointed the moment, right? Could have been my villain origin story, but it didn't. Thank God. So I was jumped in eighth grade, right? This dude, John Barks, who I was dating his girlfriend. She was my ex. Whatever. Who cares, right? This is ridiculous. And so he was like, "Oh, I heard you were talking about her," and I was like, "I wasn't," And so anyway, him and like 14 of his buddies, jumped me when I was in eighth grade, and scars and the whole nine. And I felt like, one, I never wanted to experience that again, right? I never wanted to be jumped again. So kind of put a chip on my shoulder, and it really, I became very aggressive after that point, right? But I also had this moment where I never wanted somebody to feel like they were ostracized, that they weren't accepted. And I always sort of made it my mission to make people feel like they were included, like they were in part of if they didn't have a place to sit, then they could sit with me, right? Or if they didn't feel accepted, well, I was going to accept them, And so I always, man, as I'm thinking about my life, what a poignant question, because like my wife would always ask me, like, why are you always surrounded by broken people, right? And these people that have like these issues and stuff. And I'm just like, I don't know. I just always feel like I have a duty to help them, and to fix them, and to make them feel like they matter, right? And so the reason why I talked about the client journey was because I feel like a lot of times when somebody accepts money from somebody for a job, they kind of forget about them, right? They're like, I got your money, and then just kind of phone it in sometimes. And I'm like, well, why are we not doing a better job of creating a client journey so that the person feels like you care about them, not just their money? And so it sort of just kind of infused itself into the core values of how I run my business and how I run myself, is just, accepting people, meeting them where they're at, making them feel good about what they're doing. And a lot of times when we're putting people on tape, because a lot of what we do is production for attorneys and for different people, a lot of these people have never been on camera before. A lot of these people have never spoken, about their opinion, right? They do their job well. They're great attorneys, but they've never been on camera talking about their authority. And a lot of them have this imposter syndrome. And we've done a really good job. I think we do a really good job with our company and making people feel comfortable and allowing them to shine, and allow themselves to be who they are and live unapologetically. And so, long answer to this question, right, is that I just I show up now making sure that people feel included, and want to make sure that when I deliver something, that I over deliver, and do it in a way where people feel like it was a fun experience, not that they just got something.
Yeah, there's a lot of different angles, and I love the thread between this. And like I said, it answers kind of the theory that I was saying, where I believe a lot of entrepreneurship is taking something about ourselves that we feel is broken and turning it into a gift for the world. And I would love just a couple more details about this moment from eighth grade. Where did this happen?
This
Like
was
what?
in This was in Kaiserslautern, Germany. So when you go to, my dad was in the military. So when you go to school, you go to Army brat school, right? So you're going to school with a bunch of kids that whose parents are in the military. And so this was in Kaiserslautern, across the bridge from the school, heading home.
And you were walking home, and then he shouted, "Hey, punk," or
Pretty
something.
much, yeah. And then and then everybody, like,
And then there
how
was
it was at school.
14.
Then
Yeah.
everybody just kind of surrounds you, and you're like, you're stuck, right? And so
Hmm.
I was just kind of stuck in the middle of this circle with this guy, and then just got pummeled.
Great. Okay. That's what I needed. So, something that you've been talking about, you're going to talk. We met at Flight Club, which is an amazing place. And I believe that you mentioned this. And I think this is really interesting because I was also talking to Atiba de Souza, who got a very similar insight at Flight Club. He spoke in front of the group about one of the things that he's been learning or doing about how he works with his team members. And all of you will just have to go and listen in about this. And I believe I remember you mentioning the love languages in emails. And I think this is a great segue into that because it seems like this is a way that is perfectly fits in with client journey and how you want your clients to feel accepted and feel a part and feel like they have a place at the table. Of course, obviously your clients, but it should go without saying, but it also shouldn't because I think these are things that are really ignored in this. Can you tell us a little bit about this concept of love languages in emails and client journey and in client experience for us?
So when I read the book, The Five Love Languages, right, and read it a couple of times, and I was like, oh yes, this totally makes sense. When it comes to a loving relationship, right, with your wife or partner. But then I went back at it, and I was like, why isn't this? I mean, business is relationships, right? So why aren't we infusing these types of touch points? And if we could make people feel good in the process, wouldn't that strengthen relationships and bonds and increase revenue and increase, referrals and just have a great experience throughout the entire process? And I started doing it, just testing it out, one with clients, gift giving, right? So sending them a gift, saying thank you for being a client. Obviously, we incorporate a gift immediately as soon as somebody pays us, they get a gift, and it's a welcome gift. So it says, hey, thank you for coming on board. And the basketry, shout out to the basketry. They're a company in Louisiana that I work with. A friend of mine owned it. She has an entire store, and you tell them, hey, this is the person who I want to send a gift to. And they will, and you say, hey, this is the budget. And they will put together a gift, wrap it, make it look really nice, and send it for you. It is game changer. Right. And so we started doing that. The response was incredible, obviously. Right. Because it was sort of personalized to them. And then we started, I was like, team, when people are getting ready for a shoot, what's happening? They're nervous, right? So let's send them a message, a video, right before their shoot, and saying, "Hey, here's some things that you should think about, and don't put so much pressure on yourself. This thing is going to go great," and just kind of words of affirmation through that process. And then right after the shoot, send them another video that says, "Hey, amazing shoot. Really, really enjoyed it. Here's the things that I really enjoyed," and giving them that praise, right? And that started getting really good results. And I'm like, okay, this is working, guys, right? People want to hear good things about themselves. They want to get gifts, right? Then we started infusing networking, right? We started incorporating, hey, I want to introduce you to so and so. I want to introduce you to so and so. And then we started posting about them, and we started doing things for them, and the acts of service started to come into play.
Ah, there it is.
And we were like, great, this is the acts of service, right? So we're actually doing things for them. And then When we invited them to our podcast, we got to spend quality time with them, right? In a space where we gave them a platform to talk about themselves and make it about themselves. I mean, you asking me these questions and you doing all of this stuff for me immediately puts you in my mind in another space, right? Because now immediately I'm drawn and I'm appreciative that you're giving me an opportunity to express myself, right? So
Hmm.
I'm super grateful for it. And so we're like, well, shit, this is working for them. So then I started going, well, if this is working for our clients, couldn't it work for our prospects? And that's when things really changed because then we were going, wow, okay, how can we make a stranger feel like they're a friend? And so we incorporated the podcast as the quality time. It's also words of affirmation, right? And so then we started infusing into our follow-up strategy on like if it, and this is only if it was a good fit. We would get on a call and then we would say, hey, if you're interested, we would love to show you how we help people like you. And they said, yeah, 100%. They love it. Then we would send them a Google review. Then we would introduce them to somebody in our network. Then we would cut clips for them for the show for free. Then we would comment on their social media posts, right? Then we would send them a gift. I have a direct mail piece gift. And I'm telling you, by the time we would get to the sales call, they're so primed and they like you that they're like, yeah, it's a good fit. Let's go. Right. And it was a no brainer. It was so easy. It was so easy to convert because at this point, I'm not trying to manipulate somebody into doing something they didn't want to do. Right. People want to work with people they like, trust, and respect. We're giving them that opportunity, and then through the follow-up process we're doing all of these loving touch points, and then through the client journey they're also getting these love touch points. So the entire process to them is always a feel good process. And I wish I could take credit for the entire thing, but I read the book Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman, and then I infused it with the five love languages, and then the ultimate sales machine. So that was the trifecta that like I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be good, right?
Just in case somebody hasn't heard the five love languages, let's just take a step back really quickly and list the love languages. And then you gave us really good examples in there, but maybe like a quick little tangible example of how somebody could use that for a prospect or what it looks like. I mean, it should be pretty intuitive of what that looks like in a relationship once it's said. And
Sure.
then, yeah,
So touch, I mean, obviously, some people like hugs, some people don't. I just kind of leave that one off to the side. Um,
fair
but
enough.
gift giving, anything that you can do with your offers that you think is valuable could be a gift, right? So send them, give them something of value without any expectation of a return, right? Acts of service are, leaving them a Google review, introducing them to somebody in your network, introducing them to somebody that can help solve a problem for them, right? Quality time is the podcasting really does that, but you know, setting up a golf game, going to dinner, going to a lunch, going to breakfast. I like to take walks with some of my clients and prospects and employees, right? So like I'll go on walks with them. So that quality time works really well. And then words of affirmation. This one you can do all day, every day. Hey, thank you so much. You rock. I just saw that video you posted. You're looking good, man. Are you going to the gym? Your skin's looking great. Are you juicing? Like words of affirmation you can do all day, every day, right? Just make people feel good. And so those are the four main things that I do and here's the differentiator right here, right? It's great to be in it's great to have those intentions to go, hey, I intend to make this person feel good and I intend to send them a gift and I intend to do all of this. But if you don't have actionable implementational items, where there's a task sent to you to let you know to do this, or a task sent to your team to let them know to do that, it's never going to get done. So what we did with Go High Level is we've just made it recurring tasks within Go High Level to send a person on the team or myself a reminder to, hey, send so and so a word of affirmation, send so and so a gift, send so and so this, send so and so that, right? And it's all laid out and it's all a recurring task and it just gets done on a consistent basis.
And I think it's some of the most valuable things you can do. I think the quality time, well, I imagine, especially working with the level of client that you're working with, and I can imagine many people out there with high ticket clients, dedicating your marketing budget to a few of these high level gifts, to a trip to the golf course, to a good dinner with the right people is absolutely worth so much more than what you could spend in ad spend or just creating more uh, like posts on social media in the same way. These are very high level relationships. And in the world these days, I think that these things are becoming antiquated, not because they're not valuable anymore, but because we value things differently and maybe incorrectly in thinking that just being louder or having more output is the way. And yeah, I think that this is really, really powerful stuff, but it's not something that I love having it as something that's built into your system. Um,
Here's look, I, this was not intentional. This was
mhm.
not intentional. Glenn, right, who lives who runs Flight Club, he also lives in Miami, he also lives in Vegas. I'm in Miami every month for clients. I'm usually in Fort Lauderdale, but I'll make the trip to Miami and I'm like, "Hey, I'm in town. Do you want to grab dinner?" And we go and we grab dinner, right? And we get to connect. And I've been to dinner with Glenn several times, and we always have the best time. I'm getting to speak at Flight Club, right? Is it directly correlated with my relationship with Glenn? Absolutely. Right? Like we got to talk, but my intention wasn't let me go to dinner with Glenn so that he can let me speak at Flight Club. That wasn't the intention. The intention was I really want to connect with this guy who's running this awesome event and obviously we have the same sort of mind, right? And it was like, oh wow, and then we had dinner and then we started connecting and we're like, oh wow, there's a lot of things that we agree on and we're connecting, right? And then all of a sudden things start to happen from there. He also is acting in my project, my Life on Bourbon comedy that I just wrote. He's a character in the show. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Oh, he will be a good character.
it's funny.
This brings back, so there's two keywords here: love languages. And we've spent a lot of time delineating the languages, but what I think you've just pointed out is the love. And what I mean by that is offering these things without expectation. Because if you, in the same way that if you're taking, your partner out to dinner with a certain expectation, it's going to mess with the energetics of the exchange. But if you can give it freely, openly, from a place of abundance and security in yourself, then they can be received and allowed in that way. And I think that it is important to mention that and to come from that space if this is how you want to be operating, because it's not going to work if just like you were saying, if you really had that intention, it would change how things would have played out. And there's a lot of people out there who are acting in this kind of way.
You can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel it when that's manipulation. That's manipulative, right? Like that's manipulative. It's not, yeah, to your point, it's not coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place of manipulation. It's coming from a place of, oh, I'm going to do this so that they can do this. And it's calculated. And it's like, dude, come on, man. Like, what are we doing here? Like, that's not, I mean, and look, I mean, people are going to use nefarious things because that's just who they are, right? I mean, I don't recommend it, You know what I mean? Like I really don't recommend it, but people are people too. So, it's kind of shitty in in that respect.
Yeah. So let's talk about. I would love to, if somebody who's not using these love languages in their clients and prospecting, what are some of the problems that they would be experiencing with this? And some of the things, these are kind of high level ideas, but their leads aren't converting. They're probably getting ghosted on their sales calls. Maybe they thought things were going well, but it's not. What are some of the other symptoms of a lack of a love language in our marketing and sales processes?
I think I think we just spoken about it, right? It's this fake rapport. What are they in every sales training that I've been to, Sandler, I've sold Kirby vacuum cleaners, I've sold Cutco. Every sales training that I've ever been to, the first thing that they talk about is how do you build rapport, right? And people spend what? They spend 5 minutes talking about rapport. Kyle, where do you live?
Bend, Oregon.
Oregon. Are you an Oregon? Are you an Oregon State fan?
I haven't lived there that long, so no.
Okay. All right. Where do you follow sports at all?
University of Utah.
Okay. Are you a University of Utah fan?
Yeah, I like the football team. I
Okay, good.
particularly like the tailgates, if I'm being honest.
Awesome. Great. That's awesome, man. So let me tell you about my offer and how I can sell it to you. Right? Like that's about how much time people usually spend on a sales call building rapport.
Hmm.
Right? And I'm like, guys, what are you doing? And people can feel it. They're like, okay, hey man, can you get just can you get to it? Because this is really sounds fake and really not genuine. So if we could just get past this part, that'd be really, really great. You know?
Hmm.
So everybody's just kind of focused on the sale, on the close, and they're not necessarily treating the person as a person. There's a really good book. It's called Leadership and Self Deception or self
Hmm.
sabotage. But they talk about when you're treating somebody like an object, you're inside the box. And when you're treating them like a person, you're outside the box. And to get outside the box, you just have to treat the person like they're a person. That's immediate. And it can happen immediately. And so what happens is people are either living in this limiting belief system or they're living not in abundance. They're desperate and they're just clawing and they're just focused on like the money. And what happens is when that's your focus, the humanity leaves. And once the humanity leaves, the relationships go out the window. And so who cares if you close the deal? You know what I mean? Like that's when people experience buyer's remorse, right? That's when people start feeling like, "Oh man, I felt pressured into doing this." Right? And pressure and closing techniques to me come from a place of manipulation and not necessarily from the relationship and whether or not I can actually help this person. Like I don't want to get your money if I can't help you. Like that's not for me. That's not a good sale. It's because maybe I can't help you. Maybe we're not even in the right ballpark. And me accepting money, I had a call today with an attorney from Miami. We did content for him, and he was like, Armando, am I gonna get cases from my social media? I said you can, but it's more of a branding tool, right? Unless you're doing ads, social media content organic is just for branding purposes. Now, if I didn't have integrity and I just was looking for the money, I would have been like, yeah, man, absolutely 100% you're going to get cases from it. 100%. Let's go. Let's move, right? And then what happens? 6 months from now, if he's not seeing real growth, you know what I mean? Then and his expectation was that he was going to get cases from it, he's going to be pissed. And then
Hmm.
what, right? So like for me, the long term is always more valuable than the short term. So and I may talk about is a long answer to a short question, but the problems are is that people are taking the humanity out of the sales process.
Can you tell me about a moment where you were in this process, either On the receiving end or maybe on the giving end, where you felt the humanity lacking? Maybe it was a mistake that you made, or you were inside the box. And I think a lot of the times when we're inside the box, because I've read that book too, and I think it's fascinating
Yeah.
that we feel like we're acting in good faith because it's leadership and self-deception.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because when you are in self-deception, you don't know it. And very few people, there's probably a few people out there, but very few people are like, I am manipulating this person. We feel like we're the good guy with our own lens. Tell me about a moment in your own life where you were experiencing the pain of this.
Where I was being sold to.
You could either be sold to, or if you remember making a mistake in your own sales process and realizing the error in your ways.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was in a hurry, and I just kind of wanted to. I wasn't really concerned. I was just, I was like, oh, I've been on sales calls. I've been on sales calls, and I just kind of phoned it in, and just went straight to the close, without, finding out even if I was just talking at the person. I wasn't really figuring out what their pain points were to see if this was even a good fit. And the person the energy shifted real quick, right? And they just were looking at me, and you could tell the body language was off. And I was like,
So it was a Zoom call?
yeah, it was a Zoom call. And I was like, oh, I said, hold on. I said, wait. And I stopped like midway into it, right? I'm just pontificating and blah, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah. And these are the results. And, and I said, what are your thoughts right now? She's like, well, this is very overwhelming. It's a lot. And I was like, yeah, it is a lot. Let me back up, and let me ask you a couple of questions, right? And we got to talking about her, and who she was, and why she even started the business. And mind you, I had not had her on the podcast, right? So we had not created rapport, and we had not created a relationship. It was just basically a referral from somebody that I was like, oh, okay, this person's going to be ready to buy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to go into my pitch. They're ready to buy, right?
Yeah.
And I totally ignored all of the things that I know to be true. And man, as soon as I just stopped and started treating her like a person, the conversation began to open up. She began to open up. I started figuring out, oh, these are the pain points. Here's where I can help you. And then I apologized. I said, look, I'm sorry. I just kind of started going in on you. I should have just asked you more questions, and really figured out if this is a real good fit. And this is not something that I do normally. And we ended up working together for like 2 years, and it was a really good relationship.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I think I have enough information. Do you want to hear your story?
I would love to hear my story.
I think all of us just want to fit in this world, and it's a hard world to do that. And I can remember from a young age in 8th grade crossing a bridge in a foreign place. My dad was in the military, so I was moving around all over the place and turning around and seeing another guy from my school and 14 of his buddies coming around to bully me. They all surround me, and I'm stuck in the middle of a circle, nowhere to go, face to face with this guy who's bigger, meaner, and they all end up jumping me and beating me down. And I can remember getting up from that, feeling like an outsider, feeling rejected, feeling taken advantage of. It was unfair. And I remembered that I never wanted to experience that again. And not just for myself, but for the people that I touched and connected and worked with. And this would be a theme for a lot of my life and a lot of what I was doing. I can even remember my wife remarking that I liked to surround myself with many different kinds of people to make a space for them even if they seemed broken, and started to build up my business and my reputation, creating high quality experiences, helping people be seen, helping people be welcome. And as I started to grow in my business, this became something harder and harder to do. There were more clients, more fires to put out, more team to manage, more things to maintain and maintain and maintain. And I can remember one day where I forgot all of this. It was a day working with many different sales calls, going through the motions again and again. I had been trained by the best in sales, and I knew that the most important thing was rapport, was connection with these people. And I was in a hurry on this call. This person I didn't have rapport with, I didn't have connection, but they came from a referral. And so I figured they were ready to buy. And I can just remember getting on the rails as soon as I was on this call, just talking about the features and services and all of these things. And I could catch myself minutes into this call. Her body language is off. The energy's off. And I'm already deep into this. And I had to stop and say, what are your thoughts right now? Because I realized in that moment, in a strange way, that I had become the bully, that I was being unfair, that I was not listening or accepting or creating that space. And I realized right there in that moment that things needed to turn around, not just in this conversation, but in everything that I did. I can remember not long after that picking up a book, The 5 Love Languages, and seeing how there were many different ways to show somebody that you appreciated them, to make them feel accepted, to make them feel welcomed. And each one of these people had different ways. Different people had different ways of receiving and accepting these kinds of things. Now, it all made sense in relationships, in romance, but I started wondering to myself if there was a possibility to not only do this with my clients, but with my prospects. How could I use things like acts of service, gifts, quality time, words of affirmation in a way that would make people feel welcome and open and seen, open to what I was doing? I started small, a little gift here, and I started seeing how this was changing how I went about and strategized what I was doing. And most importantly, I changed how I saw my relationships with my prospects. They weren't a check off the list or something that I was doing. They were people that I was cultivating a relationship with. I was offering these things as with open hands, without expectations, knowing and trusting the process and the abundance with it. And over the course of a few months and a few years implementing these things, I started seeing how people were responding to me differently. My clients were feeling safer and being more successful. My prospects were more open and ready to go. It smoothed everything out. And to the point where I'm even invited on stage to speak in front of you, not because I was intending or doing this strategically, but because I was giving these love languages with an open heart and an open mind without expectations. And it's changed everything about the work that I do. And now in the next 40 minutes, I'm going to share exactly how you can start creating the same transformation in your business today.
It's incredible, man.
Thank you.
That's incredible. Wow. So this is what you do.
Yeah.
Dude, that's incredible. Wow.
That's a slightly different love language of helping people see and connect and be seen, connect their own dots.
I am blown away, man. Blown away. I
Well,
can't.
thank you.
How you put that together, man, is just really super interesting. Super interesting, man. I was just like, damn. Yeah, I'm. Are you gonna send me that? Can I use that?
Absolutely. Another
Great.
gift for you.
I would
But
love. Yeah.
yeah, to close things up and to wrap things up today, tell us where we can go to learn more about you. And do you have any closing thoughts for the interview today?
You can find me all over. If you If you want to go on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, super easy to find. Armando Leduc. And closing thoughts, man. I'm just blown away by this experience. This is wow. And I get to do a lot of cool stuff. I just got back from Napa with a conference, and it was awesome. But I will tell you that this 45 minutes was a much more fulfilling experience.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. And that reflection has made my day, and I'm proud. It's been many, many years of work and practice building up this muscle. So, Armando, thank you so much for joining us today on the Story Engine podcast and sharing your brilliance with us as well.
Thank you for having me.